Morning. Yeah, nice to have a chance to be together again, do the meditations, and really happy that we had a chance to have meditation classes with my wife for the last few weeks. It's fun for me to have a chance to be back and I go through these together with you all as well. So I was just spent 3 weeks with my parents. It's a nice opportunity to see them, spend time together and uh, reaffirm my gratitude for their parenting and helping me to get to this place and eat good food and so forth. See the see aging in action. You sort of when kids are little, you're tracking every few months or every few years. You see them, uh, aging proceed, and you see them growing and they're changing so much. Um, at some point later in life, you begin to see the same sort of change, where really quite notable change every couple of years. Parents looking a little bit, a little slower, a little rougher, but my parents generally in very good health, and so it was really a great opportunity. So I One of the meditations I was doing while I was back home, just on my own, is something that I wanted to pass along here and combine with some stories from a friend of my father's, about how to make use of our feelings, and so to just yeah how to experience some meaning and benefit from the feelings that we're having naturally, different ways of interpreting and experiencing those. um, and so feelings, of course, they can be physical feelings. The way that So feeling is just the experience of something as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So normally we use feelings about like tactile feelings, I'm touching something, or emotional feelings, like I can feel pain in my heart, something like that. There's a somewhat broader way of using the term feeling, like what's your feeling about this music? What's your feeling about this painting, right? Are you experiencing it as pleasant or unpleasant, right? Is this a pleasant or an unpleasant or neutral um, music, or pleasant, unpleasant, neutral smell, taste? So for every mind that we have, we always discriminate things into pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. There's nothing that we experience that we don't e- also feel as pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Even somebody sends you an email or a document. Is it good? Is it bad? Or is it neutral? There's a feeling associated with every single thing in our experience, and that's what makes us biased. Now, bias is not necessarily a bad thing, right? We're biased towards being happy, and we're biased ideally towards helping the whole world be happy, right? That's bias, right? Of all possible conclusions, we strongly prefer for everybody to be free from suffering and happy. That's bias. But bias is not necessarily bad. Um, Normally, we have very strong bias towards ourselves and against anybody who we categorize as other, like in another group. And so that's the bias that can quickly become unhealthy. But it's feelings that bias us in the sense that we always want to go towards whatever is good. We want to collect all the good things towards us and around us. We want to get rid of all the bad things. Um, but feeling tends to be something that we don't feel like we have a whole lot of control over. It just happens to us. So it is, in a sense, it's kind of the passive part of our experience. And when we meet each other, we say, "How you doing?" And you say, "Oh, I'm miserable. I've had a terrible day. My boss was yelling at me, and this customer, left, and my computer's malfunctioning." There's all this stuff that's happening to you. Your boss does something to you, the customer does something, your computer does something to you. So we kind of know, like we know that there are things we can do to try to make our life go a little bit more smoothly, to try to direct it, to try to make it so that the odds are that good things are going to happen rather than bad things. But at the end of the day, what we actually feel uh, seems like something that's passive and that we don't really have any control over. And so that's what I wanted to focus on in the meditation. So in the meditation, we can pay attention to the feelings in our body, but we can also bring to mind, any emotional feelings, things as we have distractions or memories, or are bringing something with us from the rest of our life. And we can try to focus in particular on the unpleasant feelings. We normally don't like to spend much time with them, but just noticing them, becoming aware of them, and then go into how we can make even those unpleasant feelings meaningful, useful, helpful for us. Okay, so as usual, this is a chance for us to absorb a little bit in meditation, to relax, to disengage from our external activities, so we can find a comfortable position for our meditation. If it works for you to sit with your back upright, straight but relaxed, and to reduce our distractions, we can close or partially close our eyes. We take a deep breath in and out. Another breath, just inviting ourselves to relax. We feel that in our body, wherever, your legs, chest, face. Another breath, just asking ourselves, what is important now? We can continue to focus on our breathing, partly to help our mind to slow down a little bit, give ourselves something to anchor onto, and allowing ourselves to become aware of our body, our whole body. We try to become aware of all the parts of our body that we're not normally paying attention to. The feeling in our hands and feet, throughout our legs and arms, up through our torso, neck, shoulders, head. Our body itself is a physical thing. It's a material entity, not too different from all of the inanimate objects around us. our body will look relatively similar even after we die for a little while. So within our body, we notice, we shift our attention to our feelings. We just ask ourselves, what are we feeling in our body? This mental activity is what distinguishes a living being. Feeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And just scanning our body, we try to become aware, in particular, of any unpleasant feelings, any small bits of pain or discomfort. Not regarding them as bad, just regarding them as information. The unpleasant feelings we can call suffering, even if they're very mild, but they range in intensity. But we may also notice in our body the residue of emotional suffering or pain, some feelings of tension, stress, sadness, fear. And if we notice these emotional sufferings, we ask ourselves, where in our body are we feeling these? If we ask ourselves, how do we know when we are afraid? Part of the answer is just in our body itself. Our body tells you if you are afraid. If your heart starts beating quickly, your palms sweating, you know you are afraid. These emotional reactions in our body, they are the fear itself. They are the grief or worry or anger or pain. They're not different from the ideas that we have around that situation. When we notice a feeling of suffering, whether it's a physical discomfort, physical pain, or some emotional pain or discomfort, we can also bring to mind times when we may have caused physical pain to others or emotional pain to others. Times when we may have acted in threatening ways, abusing others or harming them, and even in some small way, even harming insects and so forth. These two, causing suffering and experiencing suffering, are two sides of the same situation. They are not different, they both arise together. Even mentally wishing to take something away from others or to cause them some harm is not different by nature than our own fear that someone will take something away from us or cause us harm. So the more we fill our mind with thoughts wishing to take from others, wishing to cause them harm, the more we can begin to experience the fear, this underlying fear that others might take from us or cause us harm. So if we want to become free from fear, free from physical pain, free from loss and grief, we need to make a determination never to cause physical pain, fear, loss, sorrow to others, and where we have done so in the past, developing regret for doing so. And even scanning through our body if a distraction or pain or fear or worry arises. I can think this is showing me how I can become free from that by changing my own actions, abandoning harmful actions. And then we can develop some wish, imagining what it would be like if we had completely purified our experience, removed the experience of suffering by removing any negativity from our mind. And imagining if we could help others to do the same. Imagining living in a world where people were free from suffering through learning to control their own mind, their own tendencies. with this good motivation, we can make a decision to try to listen deeply, take this practice into our heart and build some familiarity with it so we can begin to transform our own difficult situations into something meaningful that benefits us. And with this intention, we can open our eyes and arise from our meditation. I've said many times in the past that we are storytelling primates. Like we just tell stories, and we operate in a world of stories. We tell a lot of stories, right? But none of those stories is more important than the story of I, right? This central figure, right, that appears in every single story, right? So when we develop the sense of I, implicitly at the same time, we develop a sense of other, right? So I and other are interdependent. If there is no I, there is no other. If there's no other, there's no I. And our sense of I expands and contracts in a very fluid way. We don't even quite notice, like if we're at a sports game and, you know, there's 10,000 people cheering for a particular team. It's like, we win. You know, this big, very big sense of I at that point. It expands to include that entire group. And then the other is like the other 10,000 people who are in the arena. You know, and so this, when you're driving your car, in fact, another car swerves in front of you and he almost hit me. No, did he? What did he almost hit? He almost hit your car, but you say he almost hit me, right? Because we appropriate things, right? Like we our sense of I is incredibly fluid. So you're playing a video game and you're like little Mario and hopping around and, oh, I got to the next level. Oh, I got another 100 points. Oh, he killed me. So our sense of I is incredibly fluid, right? And that's why we can get into movies, we can get into books, we can get into video games, we can get into our dreams, we can, you know, become part of a new team. And anyway, but um, where there is the story of I, immediately there's also a story of other. And as soon as you have I and other, then there's one of two things can happen. Other can do stuff to you, and you can do stuff to other, right? And so those four things all come into existence simultaneously. They're all part of the same story. They did this to me. We did this to them. Now we spend the vast majority of our life. So when others are doing stuff to us, it feels like we have no power. That's the passive experience of things. That's the side of feeling. How are you doing? Oh, you know, it's been a really rough day. And oh, the weather sucks. And or it's been a wonderful day. It's been an amazing day, and the weather's beautiful. But it feels like we don't have any power over those things. As a passive being done to. And then there are a small number of things that we can do, right? Where we have some, what you call agency. We have some ability to act and to take responsibility. And agency is something that we can learn and enhance, or we can lose. So my dad's best friend for a number of decades was was someone, was a guy who, had a lot of similarities to my dad. Smart guy, nice guy. He was a mentor for me and so forth. Um, but over the years, I was chatting with my father recently, who visited him, and over the years, he had some difficulty here and difficulty there, and he got into a marriage uh, where, um, in a sense, neither of them were very happy with each other. Um, and they both kind of blamed each other for the being unhappy. Like, clearly, every time I'm unhappy, they're there. So clearly, there's some relationship there. Probably it's their fault, and vice versa. And you had this job didn't work out, and that job didn't work out, and um, he basically, and then he's basically been increasingly miserable and lacking some feeling of power. Now, he was a therapist in his earlier life, and he's a minister now, right? So he's in a position of trying to offer advice to others. But on a personal level, his life is just, he feels like he has absolutely no power. And he's miserable with his wife, and his wife's miserable with him, but both of them feel like there's no possibility of not being together without being even more miserable. And just this complete lack of agency, this lack of any sense that you can do anything about it. And so every time my dad meets with him, he offers him a few pieces of advice. Well, try this, try that. But there's always some reason why he can't take that advice, why, he just can't do it. He doesn't feel like he's got the power. Because really, it does take courage. It takes some courage to take a big step. And I'm not saying he should necessarily leave his wife or vice versa, but he should do something, right? He needs to change something. And it is not true that we have no power. And so we can have power. And so one of the reasons people love movies and TV and video games and so forth is it gives you some sense of power, right? Even if the rest of your life is miserable, at least in the video game, you can be doing this. And at least in the book, you can have this wonderful, exciting thing. And we love getting into these stories because it feels like we can be unstuck. But one of the powerful ways we can be unstuck is telling ourselves more useful stories. And one of the most powerful stories we can tell is this story that everything we experience is not unrelated to our own actions, and that by our own actions we can change our experiences. So we all want to have what you'd call pure experiences, meaning purely good experience. Like you want a day that is purely good with no interruptions of bad, where there is just an uninterrupted string of good feelings and so forth. But it doesn't feel like that's within our power. But every time we experience some difficulty, there are ways of telling ourselves new stories about that difficulty that allow us to have agency, that allow us to feel like we have some control over it. And one of them is every time we experience some difficulty, recalling times when we may have caused difficulties to others. Now, if you have been incredibly good and careful through your whole life, and you basically cannot, through your imagination, remember any single instance where you've caused any pain, suffering, difficulty to others, well done. That's fantastic. Most of us, you know, something comes to mind. Like, we can bring some stories to mind. Um, Life is a little rough. We've done things we regret a little bit. Now, the point of this is not to feel deep shame and guilt and regret and like I'm a bad person. I've caused, because that is just as stuck, right, as a world where people are doing terrible things to you. They're both examples of being stuck in a world where we're miserable and unfortunate. We're stuck in a world where we're a bad person, right? And the point is, for as long as you're stuck, you're actually going to be miserable. But if you're not stuck, it's not that bad. And so when I was in high school, I had a friend who used to just like going driving. He wasn't going anywhere, right? But it gave him that feeling like he wasn't stuck, like we're making some progress. Um, so when we experience difficulty, there's many ways we can transform that. One is just by thinking this is not actually different from the pain, suffering, difficulty that other people, that other living beings are experiencing. It's actually just like a sampler. It's like a little taste of this is not my pain. This is just pain, right? This is not my sadness. This is just sadness. So many people have experienced this before, and that is not that hard for us to do. And you can do it, with music. You listen to a sad song and you can be like, oh, it's heartbreaking. Why did he leave me? And we can get into it. We can really get into the emotions of a song. Um, and so with meditation, all we're doing is we're just allowing ourselves to work with these emotions without having to rely on music or having to rely on a movie or having to rely on a book, but just we can guide ourselves through this process of identifying with the difficulty of others. In particular, if we can think, there are times when I may have caused this to others or may have fantasized about, I'm going to really tell them, I'm going to, I know, even if you don't say it, we often fantasize about these, words we can speak that would stop somebody dead in their tracks. Oh, I know exactly how to cause them pain. You know, um, our minds are very good about that. Now, what happens if you fantasize about that all again and again and again? What you're doing is you're actually creating the story. You're creating the story of words that cause pain. Does that make sense? So, if you imagine that there are certain words that if you said those words to somebody, you would stop them in their tracks. What you're doing is you're imagining words that cause pain, right? Words that are just totally shut somebody down. And we're imbuing words. Words are just sounds, right? It's just blah, 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 just sounds. But we're imbuing those sounds with power, with emotional power. Now, on the we live much of our life on the flip side of that, where we're experiencing fear. Oh, somebody said this to me, and I'm still remembering years later, the things that people said to me because those words had emotional power. But it's the same thing, whether we are the victims of words that have power or we are the perpetrators of words that hurt. It's it's the same thing. They're both just different sides of the same coin, which is this conception of words that can harm. So when we're fantasizing about this, what we're doing is we're continuing to fill our mental space, so to speak, with that experience, and we are perpetuating um, the pain that we experience. We're perpetuating the pain that we experience by um, being abused or being uh, bullied or mistreated or insulted and so forth by other people's speech. Um, None of this is to say that we shouldn't also take practical steps sometimes if ourself or somebody is being harmed, physical ways, trying to take steps. But sometimes outer steps are not so easy to do. It's not always easy to to know how to solve something outwardly. But this kind of approach of transforming any difficult pains into a reminder not to cause pain and suffering to others, and transforming them into a cause for empathy and compassion, this is something we can always do. If I look at my parents' email inboxes, they're filled with political emails that are mostly intended to cause indignation. Um, and even my own social media threads, a lot of it is meant to cause indignation. That's not right. How could they? That's just unbelievable. They need to be gotten rid of. Now, that indignation, right, is a feeling. Oh, it's not fair. It's unpleasant, right? Um, and we want to do something with that. And so the emails typically include like donate here, as like, if you want to do something with that unpleasant feeling, I've got a suggestion. You can donate to this cause. But in general, these political things, we don't have much power. Some, if you do, then by all means, we should exercise as much power as we have. But the amount of pain and angst and so forth we have is much greater than the power we typically have. So it's more important that we put energy into the things where we do have leverage, where we do have the ability to change things, like our own behavior. That's the first and main area where we have leverage. So, okay. I want to be respectful of our time. I've talked a little long here, but what we can do is just take a minute or so to just reflect on this and just think, wherever I experience pain, fear, and so forth, I can use this both to empathize with others, recognizing others are experiencing this pain too. But as well, I can recall times when I may have caused pain or been tempted to cause pain to others, and make a determination not to cause such pain in future, to regret those actions in the past, make a determination not to cause such pain in the future to others. And in this way, gradually, by purifying my actions, I can gradually purify my experiences. We are not helpless victims. We have the power to change. Okay. So then we can arise from this meditation, but try to carry this with us in our daily life, and noticing as we're experiencing pain and difficult feelings, um, using these to strengthen our own good qualities.